All right, everybody ready? I'm going to start admitting folks.
Sounds good.
Hey, folks who are just joining us, we are just getting set, so we'll start in just a minute. If you want to open up the chat and put your name and affiliation in the chat, that would be great. We'll start in just a minute. Hey, Bart. Hey, Brenda. Good to see you guys.
Hello.
And for folks who are just joining, thank you for joining us. We're going to wait another minute or two as folks join us, as we get settled. If you want to go ahead and put your name and affiliation in the chat function, that would be great. Thank you to all my wonderful interns who came today. Some high schoolers represented. Awesome, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kim Gaji Alexander. I'm one of the directors at Bethesda Green. We're a nonprofit organization based in Bethesda, Maryland. And I'd like to introduce Adam Roberts. He's our executive director, and he is going to be introducing our councilmen today. So Adam, I will kick it over to you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Kim, and thanks everybody for joining. I'm looking at the list of folks who have been popping on the screen. I have to say I'm a little embarrassed. We have 2 county councilmen and Kate Medina and Brenda Platt, who know more about composting than I ever will. So Kim asked me to do a brief introduction, not only to Bethesda Green, but also to the councilmen who are going to be speaking today. I'm going to run through that, but thank you all very much for joining us, for being here for this important discussion about local composting issues, specifically the zoning text amendment to increase on-farm composting in Montgomery County. For those of you who are joining us today, not because you're already in the Bethesda Green fold, but rather because you're an Evan Glass or Andrew Friedson groupie, let me just give you a little bit of background about Bethesda Green's mission of creating a sustainable urban ecosystem. And we do that by addressing environmental issues locally, creating a sustainable green community built collaboratively through citizen engagement, environmental education, government partnership, and innovative business development. And composting, I think, is a perfect example of how we tackle environmental challenges using all of these different tools. So our Environmental Leaders Program educates and mentors area high school seniors about environmental issues and work with them on their senior year projects. And one of the teams last year, for instance, set up a composting project in their high school cafeteria to inform students about the need to avoid throwing food in the trash. And now this year, through our Entrepreneurship Accelerator, the Bethesda Green Innovation Lab, we're currently working with a new company called Loop Closing, which is a business that sets up on-site composting units at local businesses to facilitate responsible disposal of food scraps. So you can see citizen engagement, environmental education, and innovative business development, all components of Bethesda Green's mission. And now, of course, with today's discussion, governmental partnership as well. And I would say environmental protection is clearly in the news right now with climate change more than anything else, more than ever, more than I've seen in my 30-year professional career. And we're seeing more and more a concept that I've talked about since I started with Bethesda Green, which is that environmental protection and economic development are not in tension, but rather are compatible. So we no longer need to ask the question, for example, do you support protecting the environment or do you support composting? Today we can just ask, do you support our farmers? And I'm going to leave the discussion of the ZTA on composting to the county councilmen, and I'll introduce them both now, but I just want to offer one thought, maybe to guide our discussion or to think about after this concludes. And I've been ruminating on this concept that we keep talking about composting in relation to a food waste issue. And I don't like food waste as a concept, right? It's something that's negative. So I've been trying to think of how we can talk about this in a different way. And it dawned on me that it's really not a food waste issue, but a food asset issue. Compostable food materials are food assets, assets for the farmers, assets for the environment, and because of both of those things, assets for the community. And so with that, that thought, I'll introduce both of our county councilmen, and I'll do both introductions at once, and then I can be quiet and just listen to them. So first, Councilman Glass is an at-large member of the Montgomery County Council and a member of the council's Transportation and Environment Committee. Prior to joining the council, Councilman Glass was a founding board member of Conservation Montgomery, where he worked to preserve urban green space and successfully advocated for countywide regulations to protect our tree canopy. At the council, Councilmember Glass led the county's effort to make public buses free for all children in an effort to reduce carbon emissions and to foster lifelong support for public transit for generations to come. He's also been recognized as a leader on environmental sustainability and continues to advance legislation leading toward a brighter, cleaner future for all of us here in Montgomery County. And I'll just add, in addition to that, Councilman Glass was one of the first councilmen that I met when I started with Bethesda Green at the Green Fest event, where I was staffing the Bethesda Green booth, and he came over and approached me, and we had a very long, robust conversation about environmental issues, the need to do more work in the county. So I'm thrilled that he's sticking with it and being a leader ongoingly on these issues. Andrew Friedson is the District 1 council member representing Western and Southwestern Montgomery County from the DC line to the Frederick County border. He serves on the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development and the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committees. Since joining the County Council in December 2018, he spearheaded legislation to reduce energy use in buildings, ensuring newly constructed and existing building owners have the resources they need to significantly lower their carbon emissions and invest in clean and renewable energy. He has successfully fought for increased funding for stormwater facilities and worked to save stream restoration projects to protect our natural resources and build up the county's climate resiliency. He's been a leader in the smart growth movement to ensure more residents can live and more businesses can locate in transit accessible, walkable, and bikeable areas to lower our carbon footprints, and with legislation to spur housing at metro stations, and by championing resources for critical transit, pedestrian, and bicycle projects. And perhaps most importantly for me, Andrew is on the Bethesda Green Board. So I thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us today, for spearheading this important ZTA, and I look forward with everyone else to listening to the comments. So thank you.
Well,
awesome. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate that. Just a little bit of housekeeping before you start, Councilman Glass.
Sure.
For folks, we're going to go through the presentations first from the councilmen, and then we'll do some questions in the chat, and then we'll do some live questions after all of the questions have been answered in the chat. I'm also going to put a link in the chat to the ZTA for folks who have not had a chance to review it. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this time, and Councilman, you can start sharing yours.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Kim and Adam, for that. I have no presentation to share with you, so no need to share my screen. Unfortunately, for the next 5 minutes, you'll be looking at me and not some PowerPoint presentation. But Adam, I really appreciate you remembering that we met at the Green Fest, which was awesome. And I really am looking forward to the day when we can all see each other again, right? And celebrate outdoors at Brookside Gardens or wherever else it might be to just celebrate our beautiful community. And I love the term food assets. So I've already written that one down as a way to, instead of talking about food scraps or composting, but food assets. And, you know, Adam, you teed up the conversation, I think, brilliantly, because it really has been a big week for environmental policy. President Biden reaffirmed the importance of aggressive climate action here in the country and around the world, quite frankly, with rejoining the the Paris Accord, and reestablishing ourselves as a nation that looks at science and data-driven climate metrics, and making sure that we create really good jobs as well. And so I think what we need to do is continue that push and bring some of those philosophies here in Montgomery County, many of which we already have, but it's a combination of sustainability, as we know, but then also that economic opportunity. And I think as we think through things here in our region, I think it's that mix, that synergy, creating greener new jobs, whether it's philosophies on Capitol Hill about a Green New Deal or something like that. A lot of that is achievable here on a different scale, but we can certainly do that. And so that's why I introduced, alongside Councilmember Friedson and also Navarro and Rice, and quite frankly, the support of the entire council, introduced an amendment to the zoning code that is aimed at increasing composting and mulching here in Montgomery County. And those processes we know are critical to farmers. And not to go all into it, because I know that you all know this, but the benefits of composting food scraps and yard waste are really well documented, from the soil conditioning and helping add organic matter and microbes and sequestering carbon, and just improving plant growth. We know that these are inherently good. This process is inherently good, and it is inherently farming. So it is a natural fit to allow our farmers to be able to do more of this. And not only is it good for the farmers, but it's good for the processes here in Montgomery County, because right now a majority of our waste, be it food or otherwise, are sent to landfills and our incinerator. And the vast majority of food waste in particular is sent to the incinerator at Dickerson. And that burns the waste, emitting tons of harmful greenhouse gas emissions that we all breathe, and that are just harmful for climate change. And I'll give you some numbers here. In 2018, the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, did a report and found that 147,000 tons of food waste each year are generated here in Montgomery County. And of that food waste, I'll break it down even a little bit further for you. 79 tons comes from the commercial sector. 51,000 tons comes from single family residences, and then 17,000 tons come from multifamily residences. And so, quite frankly, right now, there is only a small portion of any of that is composted. The county has started a pilot program with some commercial vendors to be able to capture some of that commercial product. We also have a contract with Prince George's County's composting facility, but it is very limited. And so that is why we need to be creative, think of new ways of doing this, and also finding ways to support our local entrepreneurs, whether it's Compost Crew, Veteran Compost, or some of those other up and coming types of businesses here in Montgomery County. And so, the fact of the ZTA, let me just get to the heart of that right now. Right now, materials that farmers can use to make compost or mulch is limited. They can only use 20%, or let me rephrase it, only 20% of the materials that they're allowed to use can come from off the farm. So that really hinders the county's ability to take from residential, take from commercial, or any other sources and bring it to a farm. So what the ZTA that we've all proposed would do is increase that 20% to 50%. And so recently I had a privilege of visiting one of our farms, 1 Acre Farm up in the Poolsville area. And despite its name, 1 Acre Farm is actually 34 acres. That's a conversation for a whole nother time. But the farm takes the food waste from Compost Crew that I mentioned before, and it turns it into really high quality compost. And it is a beautiful business relationship as well as environmental relationship as well. So I know that there's even more that we can do here in Montgomery County. I really appreciate all of your interest in this topic. And I am probably most excited about unleashing the green economy here. Those entrepreneurs that want to work with county, want to work with the residential and commercial sector to help us achieve the climate goals that we have stated, because we are in a climate emergency. And so we need to do everything that we can to course correct, because if we don't, there aren't going to be any farms where composting can occur. So, so again, I look forward to a good conversation. And Adam, I'll toss it back to you or to Andrew, I guess.
I think we're ready for Councilman Friedson.
Okay, Councilmember Friedson.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you to my colleague and friend. Evan and I get to work on the most common sense bills together, the win-wins. We try to leave the controversial stuff to other partnerships and individual proposals, but when we work together, it tends to be obvious issues that can really make a big impact, and we try to get them done as quickly as we can. Just to follow up on what he said, I won't reiterate what the bill does or the zoning text amendment does, but past committee, the committee that I serve on, that Evan joined in on for the robust discussion there on Monday, probably slightly more robust than either of us were anticipating. But it was approved as expected unanimously there, and it will come up to the full council on February 9th, where it's expected and will receive unanimous approval there. I think I can confidently say that we, as Evan mentioned, have the support of all of our colleagues. So then it will go into action. And as Evan mentioned, this isn't just about supporting farmers. This isn't just about reducing food waste and turning it into a food asset. It's about unleashing the potential that exists. I mean, I see these all as green economy assets, not just the food scraps, but the farmers, but individual residents. And we have yet to fully tap into the potential of this ecosystem. We have a green economy in many ways that isn't as strong as the sum of its parts. And we are part of those parts. Certainly our farmers are part of those parts. And each of our residents and businesses are part of those parts as well. And the county can do a better job, and we're working towards this goal of facilitating that in a more comprehensive and more thoughtful way. We have the 2017 study looking at moving towards zero waste. We have a lot of work to do in that arena. I will say, when you talk about food asset instead of food waste, bringing in my longtime friend Adam Ortiz from Prince George's County, he put that into action there, and he saw the ability and the benefit of food scraps adding value. And actually, one of the brilliant things that he did there, which was so simple and yet so important, was adding food scraps to grass and landscaping waste and creating what they refer to as leaf grow gold. Leaf grow gold had the food waste in it. The food waste is much more beneficial and worth a lot more on the marketplace in terms of sales. And so again, it just shows that we can use the basic tenets of economics of how do we generate value, and we can use it to improve the environmental sustainability and climate reduction goals that we have, grow our economy, provide good paying quality jobs, and have the type of win-win-wins that we're talking about through this ETA, which is a significant but modest proposal, and one of many more that we need to do, and some of which Evan and I will continue to be working on together and along with our colleagues. As you heard from Evan before, 147,000 tons per year is the amount of potential food asset that is food waste right now. I will say that in order for us to turn it into a food asset, we have to create the pipeline and the infrastructure to make that happen, and we have more work to do in that front. This, of course, is one piece of that. But I really do think that this is the next frontier of the local green economy in a way that we can, by helping the farmers and providing them with this ability, it really empowers individual residents to be able to utilize those farmers so that we can then transition ultimately into our ultimate goal, which is to have a larger comprehensive facility to do the type of tens of thousands of tons of food a year, the large-scale aerobic organic processing facility that is envisioned in the plan that we have, but that we all recognize has a $40 to $82 million price tag and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to operate. And so we'll take some time for us to move forward with that goal and with that effort. A facility of that scale, just to compare it to the numbers you heard from Evan earlier, could process about the equivalent of the amount of commercial food waste that could be commercial food assets in the county, about 65,000 tons a year, a processing facility as envisioned in the plan. And so we're talking about, a huge impact, maybe completely changing the entire way that this ecosystem works and providing significant benefits to the county and to our economy, and also to certainly to our environment. So that's the ultimate goal. We have a lot of things that we can do in the meantime. Personally, for me, I think we can ease some of the regulations and legal hurdles to make it easier for farmers and other large-scale commercial operators to compost materials. This is one example of that. There are others that we need to continue to do. If we want things to happen, we have to make them easier to happen. I think there's a role certainly for the county government to step up in that. There are some folks here who are involved in those efforts, and I'd love to hear from you. And if you have ideas for me or for Evan, we'd love to hear from you. Or I always say my best ideas are almost never mine. So if you have one and an idea and something that we can put into action, please reach out to me and to Evan and let us know. We'd both love to put that in and work with you. You heard Evan talk about the pilot program right now with businesses. I think that we have opportunities to have pilot programs with residents as well. Take a couple thousand households. It's hard to scale it county-wide, but to provide composting containers and do the collections as part of recycling. There's opportunities to do that. I think Bethesda Green could even be a partner in that. And I think that's an area where we all can work together before we establish a full countywide composting collection program, which will take much longer and is being worked on now. And I think we have the right person, Adam Ortiz, and trying to work through it. But I think we can move forward before that. And then, lastly, I think the ultimate goal is supporting community composting and allowing residents to be empowered to do this on their own, and looking at incentives and grants and different opportunities that we can do. Again, I think Bethesda Green and other partners that are on here, because there's a lot of other organizations and leaders within other organizations that have joined us for this. But if there are creative approaches that are happening elsewhere, we should be doing them here. So you know more about these things than we do, certainly. This is what you do every day. And so we'd love to hear those thoughts as well. But I do think there's certainly an opportunity to do that as well. So with that, I'm excited about this individual proposal. I'm even more excited about how it fits into a much broader strategy to be able to get to zero waste, so that we're 100% asset, since we should be maximizing the natural assets that we have in the county, not just our food scraps, but also our people and our businesses. And we have opportunities moving forward to do just that. This is a step in the right direction. We've got more work to do, and look forward to being able to partner with you to do it. And thank you to Adam and to Kim and to Bethesda Green for all of your partnership and leadership. It's great to be able to join you and to be part of such a great organization doing so many really terrific things, and so many others who are on here are great partners in our community as well. So love to continue the conversation. Appreciate the opportunity to join you this afternoon.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilman. So for folks who just joined us, I did put the link to the ZTA in the chat if folks want to go back and review it. So what we're going to do now is if folks want to put questions in the chat, they're more than welcome to, or you're more than welcome to take yourself off mute and ask your question at this time. And I know Adam had a question that he wanted to start with. So go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, thank you both for that introduction to the ZTA and all the background on it. It's really, really useful. One question I had, and I've been thinking about this a lot as well, as I've read a little bit and thought about this this effort is in all my years of advocacy work, we've always talked about the things that we need to do as advocates, environmental advocates, or whatever we are, to achieve our goal. But some time ago, I started thinking more about what are the roadblocks that are in our way that keep us from achieving our goal. And I'd be very curious to hear from both of you, sort of, what are the arguments that folks have used against approving this measure? Why would anyone oppose this? And as a corollary to that, why 50%? Could it be more at some point? I not being critical, I guess as a starting point, that's fine. I'm just wondering, what could anyone possibly think would be a good reason to oppose an effort to get more of this food scrap waste to turn into an asset on someone's farm for the benefit of the community?
Sure, excellent question. And so let me start with the support that the legislation has. The farmers are supportive of it. Community groups have been supportive of it. The entire council is in support of it. There were only a few concerns that people expressed when we were drafting the proposal. And the questions were from residents in the, mostly residents in the agricultural reserve, who were wondering about additional traffic that might be created by the expansion of this type of business, for lack of a better term, process. And then individuals who thought it might smell, and that if you allowed more composting, it would just waft. And so the reality is composting, when done correctly, and the way that we do it here is correctly and allow the farmers to do it is correctly, we're not talking about industrial chicken farms, right, that you can smell miles downwind. There's virtually no smell. And if any of you have never been to the Prince George's facility that Andrew and I were referring to, you gotta go, and go with no plugs on your nose and your eyes wide open, and it's a day at the park kind of thing. You would hardly know. So when done properly, there are no adverse effects in that way. And then the second part of your question about the 50%. So when it was originally written, when the original allowance by former Councilmember Roger Berliner, that there was 20%. And I think to your broader point, Adam, that, again, I wasn't here, but I think that was compromised, right? It was something new and we wanted to see how it worked. Well, it's working well, and we need to do more of it. So we've increased it to 50, which does not mean that we're not going to go further, but the other complications are state legislation. So right now, farmers are actually confined in how much they can compost based on the square footage of their facility, and that is a state law. So if anyone wants to allow more of this, it would need to come out of the General Assembly in Annapolis.
Yeah, I'll just quickly, I think that's right. Cindy Gibson's on here, actually worked with Roger on the initial bill, and I do believe it was a compromise. That is how it was discussed. And that I will just say, because we've had recently this has been has come up, but it's an example of wasn't as much as many wanted at the time, but it allowed it to happen to prove that it works. And the resistance that happened then was much less than it is now. And so I think that legislating often is like that, certainly with zoning text amendments where we're changing allowable uses in different areas. That tends to be an approach that is taken, that you compromise as part of the legislative process, and that can be adjusted over time as circumstances change, as people get more comfortable with different ideas, and you can prove how things work and don't work. The only other thing that I would say is, this is still considered an accessory use in terms of a zoning code, and 50% tends to be a number that's frequently used as part of the zoning code. So there are other dynamics, where the primary use of the land is still farming, is still agriculture. That is our intention here. This is an accessory to that, to allow them to make some more money, to allow them to benefit, and residents to benefit from a competency that they would have. It would be a little bit more complicated if we went above that, not just because we need state support and help, and Evan is absolutely right about that, but we'd have to look at the whether this is considered agricultural directly or commercial. I do, it is to me agriculture, because it deals with the same kind of thing that agriculture is dealing with, but there are certain questions about that, even when you have a farm brewery and other things, how much of the crops you get from your own farm and how much you're borrowing from other places in order to make the beer, for instance, can be impacted. So, I think 50% is a good number. It will allow us to do a heck of a lot more, and we'll see where it takes us moving forward. But I think this largely resolves the issue.
Great, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Other questions at this time? I haven't seen any questions come into the chat. So if you do have questions, Kate, hi, go ahead.
Hi, yeah. Council members, thank you so much for joining us today and for that amazing introduction and all that you've done already on this ZTA. And my question is specific to urban farms. First of all, will this ZTA amendment only be applicable to farms that are within the ag reserve, or is it also applicable to farms that are outside of the ag reserve? In addition, does that land on which the farm is operating have to be zoned agriculture, or can it be zoned residential but have an urban farm operating on it, such as Coiner Farm, which is recognized in the urban ag tax credit that our county has?
Coiner Farm can take advantage of this. So it is not limited to the agricultural reserve. That just is where most of the farms are. But the way the zoning text amendment is, it's any designated farm.
Great.
And in the second part of your question, I'm not quite sure the answer to that. So I'll write it down, look it up, and then we can follow up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sure, that's music to Kate's ears. So
Yes, it is.
hopefully it's luck.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay, Jeffrey, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for hosting us, Bethesda Green and Councilmember Glass. I was so stoked to hear you point out that when you compost properly, it does smell. It actually smells good. It's a positive thing, and it's a misassociation that composting is the same as landfilling or storing food in a trash can where it rots and goes bad. So along those lines, and I really support the farm change that you've done here. My question pivots from the farm to overall capacity in general for composting, and what are your thoughts on increasing that capacity in other ways? Because getting to zero waste is going to need a multi-pronged approach, and I wanted to float an idea that doesn't have a lot of popularity but has a lot of potential, and then see if there's something that sticks or if something you want to hear more about. And the idea is that go small on systems to go big with diversion. It's like how we deployed computer systems. We started with mainframes, then we went to desktops, and computing capacities everywhere. And computers are in every office and every room. We could do the same thing with composting. Where you have dumpsters and trash cans now, we could put composting machines. So no new footprint, no new land, and the barriers to centralized composting expansion, large cost of land, environmental compliance, restrictions, permitting, zoning, and neighbors who wants a large industrial facility next to them. Even if it doesn't smell, it's still a large facility. So I'm bringing up these barriers, and you can get over them by using the space you already use with composting machines that are designed for on-site use. And just to quickly summarize the possibility of this, if you think a small machine, not much, but if you just put one sofa-sized machine on each of DC's blocks, I use DC because I'm familiar with the area, that'll give you 150% of the capacity needed for all the food waste generated. So there's a potential there, and you don't use a lot of government funds to build new facilities. We're not talking about millions and millions of dollars. This is funds we're already spending on hauling food waste away. We could use that for these machines because the payback period would be 2.5 years for these machines. Once you buy one, you use it. So you've got space, you've got economics. So it's an idea, and it could be something that helps Montgomery County move forward faster. As well as, so I'd like to hear if that's something that is of interest, but two, if there's thoughts on how you can help with centralized systems in the city, and maybe even smaller centralized systems, because there's people who'd like to help you with that.
Well, thank you for confirming that that your composting doesn't smell either, right? I have a composting bin right behind me at the side of my house, and it doesn't smell, right? So so we have to get over that hurdle to letting people know, educating people, and so much of environmental policy or so much of public policy is educating people and explaining to them why we can or why we should move in a particular direction. And that is absolutely true with environmental policy. The capacity issue, that's the real issue here. Because we generate 147,000 tons, we need to figure out how to increase that capacity to reduce our overall waste if we are to achieve our climate goals. And it is, intellectually dishonest to say, okay, well, we're not going to keep the waste here and we're just going to put it on a train or divert it or keep Dickerson incinerator open for infinity, right? And just keep sending the waste there. We decided we don't want to do that. That's not fair and it's not the right thing to do. So in mitigating all of this, this one proposal is clearly a way to help us get there because it increases the capacity at our local farmers, but we got to do so much more. And so I know that the county executive and Adam Ortiz and DEP are looking at increasing our capacity. Our waste and recycling center is essentially ancient, and we will need to create a new system. And if any of you have ever gone to that processing system up on Rockville Pike by King Farm, there's a whole lot there. There's a lot of land there, but the facility is just aged out. And so the systems that are being built around the country are more modern and have more capability. And so, but it also requires an investment. And so the county would have to be willing to invest in that as well. And then the second component of that is, I mentioned the pilot program that's currently underway, or COVID has stymied it to some degree, but it's underway with the commercial sector. The county executive is looking at a pilot program for residential use as well. And the one thing that I insisted upon was that we don't make it a full government function, right? And we make sure that we continue to support and allow our entrepreneurs like Compost Crew and Veteran Compost and all these niche or businesses to allow them to flourish. And so whether we partner with them, just like we partner with waste and recycling pickup, because those are private entities and they're not government-owned entities, I wanted to make sure that we use our local ecosystem and businesses to help get to where we want to go.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I agree with everything that Evan said. When I mentioned the three things I think we could do immediate term, I mean, this plays into it. One is reducing the hurdles and the burden. That's one, and that may be related to this, depending on where you site this small facility. You may have to put it in a public right of way. We may need to allow that to happen, and I think we should. And then the pilot question, that was mentioned. We've started the commercial side. We want to work together, and we are on the residential side. But then the third was community-based and what we can do with that. And I think this would be could be an example of either the residential pilot side of things or the community base. And I actually think there could be a model here where maybe we reduce some regulatory issue that would make it easier to site this in a community, perhaps even provide some type of grant funding where we are providing some level of support to help make this happen, but that it's community-led, community run, community handled. I think it will be much more likely that it will happen sooner, and I think you then can show the proof of concept and allow that to move forward. And I think you all here, Bethesda Green and all of you, could really help us with that. I think that's exactly the type of thing that I was suggesting, of ideas from you of what we could do to help, and what a grant program perhaps could look like, how something like this could work, what it looks like elsewhere. I mean, I know I certainly would be really interested in working together on that. I'm sure Evan would as well.
Thanks, Councilman. Any other questions? Anybody else want to take themselves off mute and ask a question?
This is Brenda. I don't know if this is quite a question, but just some comments are part of the dialogue. So first, just to join in others, thank you, Council Members Friedson and Glass, for your leadership on this, and particularly for focusing on the on-farm composting piece first. I think that's really laudable. And I think that there's so much more opportunity to grow both, support urban farms like the Corner Farm as well as rural farms to do more of this. And the state restrictions on farmers, the way that those permitting regs are written is that there's exemptions for farmers if they're within their certain footprint, as you mentioned, Councilmember Friedson, but it doesn't prevent farmers from doing larger composting. They just would need to get a permit, which actually makes sense, because if they're going to be handling more material, it makes sense that they are permitted and they have the stormwater management and other things. I just wanted to say, I try to stay away from saying composting doesn't smell or doesn't have odors, because if you're still taking food waste, rotting food, but the point is not to have nuisance odors. And you're quite absolutely right. If it's well operated and well managed, you're not going to have nuisance odors. And some of the larger facilities, the one in Wilmington that closed a few years ago, which was so big and run into the ground and poorly managed, closed because of odor problems. So anybody can Google composting and odor and try to get fodder to fight, advancing composting. So I just think one of the benefits of on-farm and the community scale and home composting is you're not going to run into that. And one of the things that I think we've been trying to work with the administration on and the county's DEP is not just to be focused on the one large scale 65,000 ton per year plan, but to, like Jeffrey's point, that there's capacity. If the county could look at capacity and the infrastructure that's needed to handle that 147 tons, that it's going to be the food rescue, which the county, by the way, is such a leader on the food rescue piece, and the yard waste composting. The county's got just amazing. The Dickerson facility is amazing. But there's more that can be done on home composting, certainly more for the urban farms, community gardens, integrating in schools. It's been such an obstacle to get approval to do composting even in gardens with the school system. So they're shifting a little bit, but I don't know why that's so hard and continues to be hard. And then the on-farm composting piece. So if the county's just, the DEP is going to be focused on this one industrial site, it's just going to be so much harder to push for that. And there's going to be more issues with contamination and odors if it's a large facility, just the potential for that. So I just applaud you for focusing on the farmers. I think that's quite right. And not only is an accessory, considered an accessory activity, but keep in mind, compost is a soil amendment. At the end, it has to go back in the soil, and that's what farmers do. We need to build healthy soils and healthy food and healthy communities. So it's the right place to focus. So, but I would love to hear about what the council can do with the administration to maybe try to frame this into a question is to kind of push for more of this distributed infrastructure, not just the focus on one large scale site, which is my fear that I think the county is kind of, the administration is looking at. And Prince George's County, I think, is a great model, but they do have just that one regional facility. There's not a lot of more just, home composting or support for the community scale. So I think Montgomery County could actually surpass Prince George's in this area of promoting distributed. So I'd just like to hear your response on that.
Sure. So I think you raised some really valid points there, and I'm going to be Googling this Delaware plant to see what happened of it, because I'm not familiar with that story. But one of the problems, quite frankly, that we in Montgomery County have is we don't have that much land, right? The county doesn't have that much land to operate on. And so as we continue growing and developing, we need to figure out where to put things. As my colleague was gently alluding to earlier in his comments, we have these robust conversations. This week, we had a very robust conversation about the agricultural reserve and what should or should not be put there. And whatever type of facilities we might need at whatever size, we know that we have a lot of land already DEP for the recycling, right? And for for the waste collection. And so sometimes the simplest thing is to go where we know we're able to do it. Andrew and I don't always go for the simplest things, to our staff's chagrin a lot of times, but we both like to be creative. And so I appreciate your point, and we'll look into how we can do that. And certainly this approach is one, but we need a lot more of it. And so I take it to heart, your comments. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I mean, I kind of alluded to this in my comments as well. The large scale facility, I think, would be great. I think we all believe that. I think the question is how doable it is and how quickly we can do it. And, while I think we should be moving towards that as an aspirational goal, because it would be hard to get to true zero or functional zero waste without a large scale facility of that type, we also don't want to wait, how long it may take in order to make significant progress that we can make right now. In that I think our residents and our businesses want to make right now, but lack the sufficient tools to be able to do them. And so I do think that we have to think near term, medium term, and long term. I mean, these are big issues with significant infrastructure, and we don't have to hold out doing anything until we wait to do everything. We should be figuring out what we can do today. And as I mentioned, the projections of the facility in the 2017 zero waste report was $40 to $82 million up front, and then $4.7 million in operating costs when it generates, to start, about $500,000 a year, $520,000 a year. Those numbers just don't work right now, and that could change. And I think we need to move towards it. Ultimately, we may be in a different fiscal situation than we are, but we should continue to pursue that. But in the meantime, to your point, we could be doing much more cost-effective, lower-hanging fruit type solutions. This is just one of them, and helping businesses and residents with pilot programs, and with some of the suggestions that we heard earlier, maybe even with small level of grants and others to let you do it on your own. You don't need us to do this. We can just eliminate some of the hurdles that are stopping people from doing it, and allow folks like you who are desperately looking to get other people on board with what most of you are already doing, which I think we should step in to help. So that's really what I think we're all looking towards. And frankly, we could use your thoughts, ideas, creativity, and understanding of all these best practices in other parts of the country that frankly I don't know about, and would love to hear more.
Thank you.
So much to unpack there, Brenda. Anybody else have a question or a comment or a thought at this time? Any of my high schoolers who are a little bit nervous, maybe you want to hop on and ask a question? Not? Awesome. Okay, Kate, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I have one, but I didn't want to. Yeah, but this can be this comment can be something that everybody can tag on here, because I absolutely just am so thrilled with that we're kind of all like talking around the same ideas here. Or what are the immediate steps that we can take? What are the ways to lower the barriers right now to continue to push this forward, to educate and make composting just part of people's communities, really, so that then when if it does become time for some big facility, it's not such a huge step for the community to get behind, because composting has been something that has been in our life for a long time. And I think that the idea with, like Brenda mentioned, school gardens and other urban farms, as we sometimes call them, neighborhood farms, that is a great opportunity to do this, to start to lower these barriers, to train the next generation and and expose us all to what composting is really all about. When we talk about the smell, what is the real smell, right? So I think we were sort of asking for ideas of ways that we can lower these barriers, continue to make this possible, immediate steps. One of the ones that came to mind was the Montgomery County Urban Agriculture Property Tax Credit, which is incredible for Cornier Farm and has made a huge difference for Cornier Farm. But I believe that was passed in 2017, and still Cornier Farm is the only property that is eligible for that credit. There was another property that applied, but they were not able to meet the, I dare say, rather restrictive requirements of this credit because they weren't able to grow enough food. And they were actually able to grow that much food. They just didn't have the resources to distribute it quickly enough. And if you look at, like, for example, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, even our neighbor PG County that we've been talking about, they all have similar property tax credits with much lower restrictions, quarter-acre size limit as opposed to a half an acre, $2,500 worth of produce grown as opposed to $5,000 worth of produce grown. So providing opportunities for other residents besides the Coiners who want to do urban farming, who want to have a small scale compost right there to nourish their gardens, lowering that barrier for other urban farmers would be a step, I think.
So no, so there's a lot there.
Yeah, sorry.
What I'll, in comparing jurisdictions, the other jurisdictions do not have the agricultural reserve that we do, right?
Good point.
1/3 of their property, 1/3 of their jurisdiction, which is, essentially for farming, right? So the incentive is built into our system here. One other thing, kind of pulling the threads that you were talking about regarding encouraging residential farming, right? That's what I'm really hearing. I'll share with you and can certainly follow up with the actual memo. I sent a memo to DEP and DPS, Department of Permitting Services, last year because I had some residents email me saying that they were having difficulty growing fruits and vegetables in their on their property, and to be specific, in their front yard. And some people had complained. And so I looked into this and learned that the Department of Permitting Services, and actually DOT, clearly it's a tangled web of who looks into this issue. It was an interesting question of, what is a zucchini? Is a zucchini a fruit or a vegetable? And actually federal law defines it as both, right? And so there was an internal dispute about how you classify it and whether or not that should be allowed. Happy to share the memo with you. It's something I'm pushing on internally over the next few months as we start getting ready for growing season. But for me, we need to continue to allow, or should allow, single family residences to encourage this type of stuff. And, not necessarily everyone outside is going to have a compost bin or a till or whatever you have, but I don't necessarily think in this day and age that people should be discouraged or banned from growing fruits or vegetables on their private property. And so if you're interested in this, or at least seeing the memo, follow up with me in my office and I can share it with you. But the last thing I'll say is, if you want more of this from the county, and this is, I'll close, I see the time. If you want more of this, advocate for it. And that's how it gets all of our attention. If more and more people want these services and want us to invest either capital dollars into it or operating dollars into it, we need to hear that this is a need and a direction that constituents want us to go in.
Well,
Thank you, Councilman Glass. And Friedson, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Well, that was number one of what I was saying we could do now. And I would love to hear your specific thoughts on why you don't think that others have taken advantage. I mean, I do think that, Evan has raised an important point that there are other opportunities where land, frankly, is a bit cheaper, which for many people is more attractive because of the land cost that the government, that we aren't really in a position to change the nature of. I'll give an example. There's a flower farm that was opened in the agricultural reserve. They provide flowers, directly to like wedding, party planners. I'm not sure exactly who they're providing to, but for weddings and special occasions, they also do it to a local Poolsville floral shop. It's only about a 1 acre plot. We're not talking about a huge amount of land that is required for a flower farm. That certainly could be in a more urban environment, but they found the opportunity where they took an acre from an existing other farm and were able to do it at a very cost-effective way. But I do think that if there are opportunities for us to change those rules to make them more attractive, I think there's a real benefit an interest in doing that. And for fear of getting into the philosophical questions of zucchini and tomatoes and whether or not they're fruits or vegetables, or my favorite, which is the plum juice question. Why is what if a plum is a fruit and a prune is the fruit that is dried? How do you have prune juice? Because the juice is already gone. I've never drank, I've never had a drink of raisin juice. I don't know if you have, but it doesn't seem to make sense. We can all ponder that.
Deep thoughts at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Overnight, exactly. So these are like important philosophical, existential questions, but it does leave a lot for us to ponder, besides just not just how to compost and make it easier to compost, but what we're putting in there and how we're classifying them.
Yeah, so I wanted to say thank you to both the councilmen for participating in our event today. It was really great to hear from both of you. And I'd like to end the conversation today with just the few minutes that we have left and asking Brenda's question, which is how can we support the upcoming vote?
Well, I'll save you some energy. The Fed committee passed it unanimously on Tuesday, on Wednesday, or on Monday. I don't know what day is today.
Monday.
Thank you.
Today's Thursday.
They passed it earlier this week unanimously, and I suspect it'll go to the full council probably in 2 weeks or so. But again,
February 9th. Sorry, Evan.
Yeah,
February
okay.
9th.
Yeah, so 2 weeks. And again, all 9 members of the council have signed on and are either co-leads or co-sponsors. So I think it's good. But to Andrew's point in mind, please reach out if you have ideas. Kate's idea, other ideas. Love to work with him and keep moving this forward.
Yeah, and can I just say, I think the audience of 9 we're good with, and certainly doesn't hurt to send a note of thanks and appreciation to reinforce good behavior. We certainly hear when people don't like what we're doing, so it's never such a terrible thing to hear those rare moments when people actually think we are doing an okay job. Just to really reinforce that you want us to continue to do those types of things. But I think just as importantly as that, and what council members would love to see more than anything, and certainly Evan and I would, is using the passage of the bill on February 9th or leading up before February 9th to spread the gospel to others, to use your significant platforms to say, hey, look what the county council just did. I think council members will appreciate, being publicly acknowledged and thanked. But I think far more importantly than that, it's just a good opportunity for us to raise this as a broader public issue to, normalize and popularize composting and to have that conversation that you all were talking about, to change the narrative and to make sure people understand what this really is, what modern composting looks like, what opportunities exist. I think that to me would be the most beneficial, the most helpful, and I think would have the greatest public good for our shared goal of expanding composting in the county.
Tremendous. Thank you, Councilman. So I'd like to let folks know that we're going to send a follow-up email with the resources that were included in the chat, and also how to contact the councilman's different offices for folks that have additional comments, questions, or concerns, and I'd like to reach out. And I also would like to ask Adam if he wanted to say any closing remarks. If not.
Yeah, just to thank you both again for doing this and for giving us an issue where we can stay silent for a change. It's kind of nice not to have to feel like we have 2 weeks of aggressive action to try and get something across the finish line. It's nice to know that, sometimes it's best for us to just let it happen. And it's good that it's a testament to your staff and you all that you've done so much work to get it to this point that you don't need our push. But after your comment earlier, now I'm starting to think about what we need to do at the state level to open it up further and maybe use this as a springboard to do that. So anyway, just to say congratulations. Hopefully it'll all go well and we can celebrate after.
Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you everybody for participating today. Have a wonderful evening, and I hope everybody stays warm tonight. It's going to be a little bit chilly, so
Yep.
have
Thanks,
a great
everybody.
evening.
Thank you all.
Be
Take care.
Thank you.
well.
Bye-bye.